Hello and welcome to the F-14 Tomcat radio show.
That was Grumman employee John Burnell, 1955 to 1994. Thank you, sir. Doing 90 through the city night. Nothing's ever gonna be alright. Life will never be what it was. Hands are shaking, 'cause now my future is crashing down on me. They try to kill me when I fought back. I cracked the scars with a baseball bat. But justice will never make this right. I need to run and stay out of sight. I no choice, it was me or them. Now for a lifetime I'm condemned. I could forget my old set way of... Hello, everybody, and welcome to the F-14 Calverton All Things Grumman Radio Show podcast. I'm your host. My name is Lorenzo, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I have our co-host with us, and that's Siphon from VF31 Tomcatters, F-14D 2006.
Hello.
And also joined by Brian from VF143, Pukin Dogs.
Hello.
Thank you guys both for joining us tonight, and we appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. We've had this in progress about 8 months now, the show. It's great to see it finally come to a point and get it recording and get it going. So many good stories and a lot of stuff that we hear from time to time, and it's great to share it all finally. So it's something we're proud to present, and I run the F-14 webpage for Instagram, and we're some 50,000 followers strong now. So we got a lot of support behind us, and we appreciate that, and we thank all of you for breathing some new life into the F-14 Tomcat. And speaking of the Tomcat, I'm not going to go into too much detail on what it is. It's the Grumman F-14 Tomcat, built by Grumman at Bethpage, Long Island. 712 airframes came out the door at Grumman Calverton. 3 different models, F-14A, F-14B, F-14D Super Tomcat. And Tomcat being quite a favorite amongst many aviators in aviation. We're quite proud of that here on Long Island, honestly. Something we look forward to presenting. We're proud to present. You guys definitely did an incredible job out at the fleet. Let's get started. Brian, we're going to go with you first from 143. You joined the Navy in 1996. You went out to 2000, I believe, in the Pukin Dogs.
Sure, yeah. I'm joined in 96. I was given the ultimatum of going to college or get a job to pay rent with my parents, and decided that I'd go with the Navy. And, everybody growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, of course, I watched Top Gun many times. And from the instant I saw that opening sequence, I knew that was something I wanted to be involved in. And so I found a recruiter, and he was a AMH on helos, told me about his job, and I decided that's what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do it on Tomcats, and actually joined as an AMS for structures. From there, went through boot camp and everything, and I got my AMS A school in Millington, Tennessee. And first day of class in A school, they told us that the top 2 guys in the class would be able to pick their orders. So, of course, I busted my butt and was the top second one in the class and got to pick a Tomcat squadron right out the gate. And at that time, it was either VF-101 or VF-143, and a little miscommunication. I wanted to go on the West Coast, and the instructor told us that the Pukin Dogs were on the West Coast, so that's what I picked, and lucked out in my eyes, lucked out and got a seagoing squadron instead of heading over to the RAG. So that's where it all went. And,
so one way or another, you were making it to the F-14 Tomcat, whether you were holding a wrench or whether you were holding a stick.
Right.
One way or another, that airplane would be in front of you.
Exactly.
So you went West Coast for 143, but right about that time, they were all coming home Oceana, correct? All
They
the
had,
sergeants?
they had actually been in Oceana, I think, for a couple of years by then.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm thinking.
I don't know where he got the idea.
He sold you a bill of goods on that one.
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
told you
think
you were
so,
going to
yeah.
Miramar, and that was Marine Corps Air Station at that point. What better way to get a signature?
I'm sure no one in the Navy's ever been told that before.
No.
Everyone's going to fly a Tomcat. Oh, that's great. That's great. So you had picked up with 143 at Oceana when you were out of school.
Yep.
And you guys were TARP certified, right, on the F-14B?
Correct.
Were 96? They were also just getting Lantern, I believe, correct?
Somewhere in there we did have Lantern.
Yeah, 96, 97.
I
think they
recall
were
them
starting to
bringing it.
incorporate
Yeah.
It would have been right about that time, yeah.
Talk to us about your first deployment. What was that like?
Yeah.
That had to be quite from your dad telling you, you have to get off the couch, you have to do something, to all of a sudden, not for nothing, an aircraft carrier is a big boat. And standing in front of it and, taking 12 jets to sea, besides the air wing. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a shock seeing an aircraft carrier up close the first time. And my first cruise luckily was on the John C. Stennis, so it was a brand new boat at the time, and we took her for a maiden voyage and took it around the world. So that was quite an experience. But of course, stuff was popping off at that time, and we had a whole long list of med ports we were going to visit. Instead, we went straight to the Gulf and set a record 13 days on station from Norfolk to the Persian Gulf.
It can wake.
So we hung out in Jebel Ali in Bahrain many times.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. There's got to be some sort of fallback. I mean, not for nothing, the stress on that flight deck and during flight operations in the Gulf, I don't think many people are aware of that. The heat, the temperature, your skin just boils, literally. And, traditionally with the Navy, no matter where the boat goes, flight operations go, whether it's up north, whether it's down south, the jet's coming off the deck screaming. So, definitely appreciate that part of the service, hearing that 13 days on station. That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Also, just to throw in, when we did cover that story on the Instagram page, it was, and still holds to this day. And I mean, that was quite a while ago, probably about a year ago, and it still holds to this day as our number one post with almost 450,000 hits on it, I believe.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
So.
Did you guys do any flight ops on the way over there? Do you recall on the transit? I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
Secure the flight deck, and that thing shook like crazy the whole way out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Tomcat strapped down and burner on the back.
A little extra thrust.
Leave the fuel line hooked up to the deck.
Sure.
Double chains, right?
Yep.
I watched a video once. They towed a Tomcat around on deck during a snowstorm. And they actually did clear the snow with it.
Yes. We did that in Oceana. Did you guys do that in Oceana some?
It snowed the first winter, but I don't remember having to deal with it.
I remember a couple times we went flying and it was ice on the wings, and we're like, well, we could spend all the time de-icing it, or we could just sit with one jet's exhaust in our nose. It was much faster.
The Grumman F-14 Tomcat, the ultimate snow removal machine.
It was awesome. We didn't do burner, just sitting there and idle, maybe a little bit above idle, but.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the left, your Grumman F-14 snowblower.
Snowblower.
So, yeah, interesting. We had talked earlier, and when I was collecting information from you, Brian, originally in this show, we had talked about something you turned me on to, which was, I didn't correlate the two. And one was that 143 dog landing and the GPS unit from the Rio breaking free. And that video is actually on YouTube, and you see the pilot auto eject upon trapping. And in the dark, everything's at nighttime. So we definitely want to get into this story, if you want to elaborate a little, if you could, on that.
Well, unfortunately, I was in my rack at the time that it happened. But yes, that's basically the gist of the story. It was aircraft 123. It was let's see, it was August. It was 97, August 12th of 97, which you can see in the video. They came in landing, caught the wire, and the Rio had his GPS. It was like a handheld GPS, and he was supposed to Velcro it to the top of the display in front of him, was my understanding.
Yeah, that's what they did back then. Yeah.
Yeah, and he missed the Velcro. And as soon as the jet caught the wire, the tension threw the GPS forward, and it hit the ignition pin. I guess I was not much of an AME, but it hit the pin on the top of the pilot's seat, and it ejected him through the canopy while the jet was in the landing area connected to the wire. In the process, the Rio was knocked unconscious.
Oh.
So there a jet on the wire I don't think it made it quite to burner. I think it was in military.
Yeah, military in a video, full military.
Yeah. But then it was a hassle. The first thing they tried doing is opening up the daily doors and messing with the linkage to turn down the engine. And from my understanding, they broke one of the linkages, and that actually throttled it up a little bit.
Oh.
So then the plane was yawing in the wire. So then the line shack all raced out there, and they chained the jet to the deck. They tried pumping AFFF down the intakes, and that just ended up fogging the back of the ship. It just went right through the engines. It didn't kill them.
Oh.
So from my understanding, they ended up bringing the crash forklift in position and dropping somebody down through the hole in the canopy to then throttle the jet back and then clear the LA after that.
Oh. Was the Rio unconscious the whole time?
Yeah. They said they when they came through the canopy, they ended up waking him up.
Oh,
and he
man.
was white as a ghost in the back seat, didn't know what the heck was going on.
Well, Siphon, that ends you blowing the canopy and climbing over the seat and retarding the throttles like you were thinking.
Yeah, that would have been my first step, but obviously if you're unconscious, not a whole lot of that happening.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, an amazing story, though. I mean, moments before, I don't want to say another day in naval aviation. It's obviously, anything can go wrong at any time, and this is absolutely proof of it. And a simple situation, everything is good, the plane is green, the deck is green, everyone is go for a landing, and something as simple as that can wreak havoc. And Siphon, you'll know, being up in Marshall Stack and hearing something's wrong with the deck and your red deck now, what's next? You're going to the tanker. You're going to the tanker, and you're going to be airborne for quite a while until they get that straightened out and get the deck, cleared back green again to get everybody recovered above.
Yeah, that's an ugly call when you hear that on the radio. Generally, they don't say that, but they'll say something like 99, extend your hold. 99 being the call sign for the whole air wing, basically. This is a night trap one or night recovery, if I recall, right?
Yep, it was 10:30 at night.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the air boss is going crazy with what to do with all the other jets at that point. Were you guys blue water ops, or were you near shore, or what?
No, I'm pretty sure it was blue water.
Oh yeah. So you got to bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. Great story too. Honestly, you guys can all catch the video on YouTube with the F-143 puking dogs. It'll come up. But great. Also, one of the other questions I had for you, we actually did lose an airframe on the puking dogs, and I believe we talked. This story was about in Puerto Rico, I believe that was. You guys did a nose gear strut replacement on it and then shot it in the morning, I believe.
That came afterward. It was we were off Puerto Rico in '99, so it was workups for the night cruise.
Gotcha.
And the jet, it was a waist cat shot, and the nose gear somehow collapsed on the cat shot and lost the jet into the water. Air crew survived, but then that turned into a whole nose gear inspection throughout the fleet of Tomcats at that point. Because I don't believe it was the only one around that time that had the same issue.
Yeah, I remember hearing about a couple of them.
And that's determined by measurements and tolerances, right? When they're out of spec, to say to a certain point, the strut is considered, it's deemed worn to be replaced.
Yeah, there was something like that, but they were specifically looking for something, which I don't recall what it was, but it was up near the mounting points of the strut into the airframe. And it had to do with the struts, because then we ended up having to swap a bunch of struts.
Yeah, I think that, as I recall, they had to NDI a certain part.
Yeah.
And they had to take it off an NDI and then put it back on if it was fine, basically. I remember something about that.
Yeah. And so we're out at sea and had a couple bad ones, and at that point we had a kind of a hangar queen. So we were kind of pulling her nose strut off and putting it on another airframe. And then we had one or two other nose struts that needed to be replaced, but I believe they had enough for one. They had enough except for one on the ship. So then it came down to our hangar queen was ready to go for fly off, except for the nose strut. And they ended up flying one out. I think we got it a day, maybe 2 days prior to fly off.
Were you guys cruising with another Tomcat squadron on that one, or were you solo?
No, we were with the Red Rippers then.
Rippers, yeah.
Yep.
The world famous Red Rippers.
World famous.
Red
Rippers.
I will never forget that 143 sign and the Ripper bus with the whole squadron out there. Oh, that is sister squadron love.
Yeah.
And that was a great video. I believe that was in Fighter Fling, is one of the places you can find that.
Yeah.
Also, a great 143 moment and a very, very, very rare Tomcat moment in the sky. We had discussed a fuel burn off the coast of Virginia with an F-14. We had discussed that. You want to jump on that?
Right. So that it coincides with the story of the nose strut and splashing the other aircraft. So the nose strut showed up for the hangar queen that we had. And so we thrashed on that overnight and got it ready for the fly off the next day. And maybe Siphon can help me out. I don't remember completely, but I believe our CO ended up having to get a waiver for a maintenance flight, because I believe technically that aircraft was supposed to take off and land back at the same spot.
Yeah, for a maintenance check flight, you have to recover at the same place you took off from normally.
Yep.
Normally.
So we ended up getting a waiver because it was fly off.
Yeah.
And we were right there near Oceana. Anyway, we could, at that point, that morning, we started launching all the aircraft from the air wing, and they saved this Tomcat for the last, because we had just gotten it up, finished a drop check overnight and made sure everything was good and working. So they got her up on the deck as the last aircraft to launch. Mm-hmm. We could see the hotels on the horizon. We were that close to Virginia Beach.
That's a good feeling.
Yeah. Had the waiver so we could take off, so we didn't have to crane that jet off. We could take off and then land in Oceana. Standing about the six pack, and they taxied her up onto the Cat. And as they pulled her up into tension, the air boss came over the 5MC and said something to the effect of all personnel clear aft of Catapult 3, and then said we're lowering Catapult 3 JVDs, which everybody kind of looked around at that point like, what the heck's going on? And we thought they were suspending the launch. And sure enough, the yellow shirt keeps throwing his hands up in the air, and the jet, a Bravo, went to full burner on Catapult 3 and launched. And that jet beat the Catapult to the water break. It was off the flight deck before we felt the Catapult hit the end of its shot. And as soon as they cleared the bow, went completely vertical.
GEF 110
until yeah, they went completely vertical until I'm sure whatever altitude they needed to be at to cover over the hotels and everything. And then he leveled it off and immediately started dumping fuel to land at Oceana. In the process was still in burner, so then it just turned into a fuel dump for the rest of the way over to Oceana, burning the whole way.
Making the F-111 community proud.
Definitely one of those launches where I'm jealous of the guys nowadays that can walk around with GoPros on their cranials, because that would have been a great one to have video of.
Oh yeah.
No,
They let them do that now? They let them wear GoPros on their cranials?
There's plenty of videos, however they're getting away with it. There's plenty of flight deck videos now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On that dump and burn, was that a 2-ship flight back to Oceana, or was it a single?
It was single.
Yeah, the rest of the squadron probably would have gone ahead, just not wanting to wait to make sure that the PMCF actually went off successfully.
Roger that.
Yep,
Roger that.
Yep. Everybody else had left at that point.
So from there, you got out of the dogs in 2000, and you went, I believe you said, back to school.
I went, then I went to a rather quick composite repair course on base at Oceana, and then went to AIMD Oceana from there.
Roger that. And from there, you finished your service out in 2004, I believe. That's correct.
Yep, that's correct.
So what are you doing nowadays? You're not fixing Tomcats no more. What are you doing nowadays?
I'm not, no. I've had a couple different careers since then, but I'm currently a ride mechanic at an amusement park in Minnesota.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And in the evenings, I believe we mentioned you're working over at the museum with some warbirds.
Correct. I volunteer at Wings of the North Aviation Museum in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. It's mostly World War II. So we have a great collection of airframes there. We have a P-51D veteran Sierra Sioux 2. We have an F-4U-4 Corsair.
Nice.
TBM-3E Avenger.
Oh.
So another wonderful Grumman product.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah.
And a T6 Texan. And then a Stearman that actually George H.W. Bush did 2 training flights in when he was stationed here in Minneapolis.
Wow, so you got some good history on the Stearman.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's one at the Pensacola Naval Aviation Museum that has the same kind of thing on it too. So I didn't realize there was another one of those that's still flying even. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're all very beautiful aircraft.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, you have some children, I believe, right? 2 sons?
I do. I have 2 sons. They are 9 and 6.
So they're getting very close to signing that paper to go fly F-14. I mean, to join the Navy. The recruiter's going to promise him a jet that doesn't even exist. Tomcat, sign here. Great. Appreciate your service and everything. It's a great story, outstanding career, especially as a maintainer, and comes with some great history along the way and some great memories, especially, like you said, stopping at all the stops and port calls in the Gulf. And, so it's exciting, man. Very exciting to hear. Thank you.
Definitely. You're welcome.
In our next segment here, we're actually going to have some fun. We're going to give Ed a call. See what Ed Keiko, F-14 Tomcat Legends, is up to.
Lorenzo.
Good evening, Ed. Good evening. How are you, sir?
Good. Does this sound okay?
Yeah, sound good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. I won't put it on speakerphone. I think it'll make it worse.
Thank you for joining us. We have Brian with us from the world-famous Pukin Dogs, 143.
Oh, cool.
And we're also joined by Siphon from VF-31, the Tomcatters.
Oh, boy.
Hey, sir.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Ed, I'd like to start everything off, first of all, by saying thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, not just supporting us, but the entire F-14 community, and bringing back all the hard work and everything that we see when we go to your store. And it's quite a feeling to be able to have the original stuff and the original artist. And, thank you for that.
Thank you, Lorenzo. I remember our pep talk back when we first reached out. and made contact. And I kind of told you how I felt about the whole thing and where everything was going.
I'll never forget it. You said, well, the numbers haven't moved in a while, but, okay.
Yeah, but you've got them going in the right direction, which is really cool. And it's funny, as we talked, I think I sent you a message before on 143. It was really kind of encouraging to see the lasting stuff that they're still doing. The history shirts out of the officers' mess, which, was a dying thing when I retired out over a decade ago. But it popped up on Facebook, and it was really kind of cool that it's still there. It wasn't my original screens or whatnot, but I could see that they were doing it and that they cared enough about it. And I think, 15 years later now, they're still pushing them out of the officers' mess, and that's a good thing for them. They're going to be in the movie and whatnot. So it's good to see them on top of the world. There's been a lot of discussion about what's going on with your Tomcat up in Hartford. I haven't been back, but
yeah, that's at the New England Air Museum.
It's just great the way the stuff comes through. And probably for another time, we had talked about in our first conversation about where all the artwork went. And we could probably do another episode on that. But for those who don't know, Lorenzo and I had talked about the great internet purge. And there was a great purge at NAVAIR and at the Library of Congress Navy Archives right about the time I retired, which is great for me that I have digital hard drives going back in the day that I still have, because there was a lot of stuff that I had collected in doing my research for the Grim Reapers, for the Jolly Rogers, for 31. The project with 143, restoring the Griffin during the transition. And when I go back now, after having talked to you and rededicating my efforts to take the artwork out of my archives and recolorize it and redo it and get it in a format that's consistent with Felix and the Tomcat era. I am still in shock how much evaporated. I mean, it is the stuff that I have in my hard drives. I go back to the Library of Congress to do squadron histories, the old National Geographics from World War II to look at some of the lineages, and poof, they're gone. I mean, it's gone. When I went to NAVAIR and I saw, I told you they were posting eBay patches as legacy images for squadron history, and I'm like, where did all the good stuff go? So in a sense, I'd mentioned to you, and with your enthusiasm, that this collection of artwork I'm trying to get through these squadrons, and if nothing else, just put it out there for what I know what was. I'm not imagining things that during the Tomcat era, there was a huge pile of artwork that even on the primitive internet was available. And through the Library of Congress. I mean, I was never a fan of traveling anywhere. I was sick for a long time, but I could log into the Library of Congress and research squadron histories, particularly in the Navy, which had very good archives. All the way back, I did VF-14's 90th anniversary, VFA-14's, the 90th anniversary carrier aviation, and that was one of my last projects before I retired. One of the last projects before the internet got purged, and the NAVAIR archives got purged. And the stuff that I was able to pull down, their history shirt was fantastic. It must have had 20-something schematic planes on it, and it was all because I was able. Well, I keep books too. I've been buying books my entire life for over 50 years. So I've got books that don't lie, that have stuff. But all that stuff is long gone, as far as artwork and references and squadron history. And not every squadron packs up their stuff and moves it along when they get shuffled. And we saw a lot of that when the Tomcat went out. A lot of squadrons packed up their officers' messes, and things changed when the Hornets came in. And some of the history stuff, with the exception of the Highliners. I mean, you know what's going on with squadrons like 103. They pretty much have everything. It's just a matter of finding somebody who knows where it all went. I mean, for crying out loud, they're carrying Ernie's bones around, right? So
Yeah, totally.
they've got their stuff kind of squared away, and somebody's always assigned to that. But that's not true with a lot of the squadrons that transit from Tomcats through the Hornets. And I know, I was at Oceana contacting these squadrons, and there was a sense of panic as the squadrons were spinning down and the personnel were changing and who was going to get pilot slots for Hornets and who wasn't. And with 143, there was a palpable change when I had done the history stuff and the transition stuff. Used to get lots of great calls and emails from the officers' mess. And then that was changing because they went from officers' mess checkbooks to officers' mess credit cards or squadron credit cards that were being audited by the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. So guess what? Guess what? A lot of things weren't happening anymore. What kind of purchases weren't happening anymore? But anyway, I can go. Let you get in here and drive this conversation.
I appreciate it. And, again, I remind everyone, Ed Kako, and he is an incredible artist, and he is licensed by the Navy, and he's responsible for a lot of the artwork that we see. And, personally, I have a lot of the original F-14 Tomcat. Actually, I almost want to say I have a lot of all the F-14 Tomcat artwork, and, a lot of it from Grumman, honestly. And I've collected my own Navy stuff through the years from my own family growing up. And when I take that original artwork from the 80s, from the 90s, and the 2000s, and I put it next to what you're producing today, it's the same. It's the same Felix sticker. It's the same color. It's the identical feel. It's what you want to see when and if you were there at that time frame, and you were at the squadron's table or in the hangar or ship store or, wherever you may have been shopping.
The ship stores, those were the days, buddy. Holy cow, yeah. Yeah, but thank you. There's a part of this that goes in. You mentioned maybe talking about how the artwork happens or how people should start drawing Tomcats again, et cetera, and getting excited because the plane's gone. But it is clearly, I've worked with a lot of stuff. On the other side of my portfolio is a lot of Army stuff, Marine Corps. Well, I did the first V-22, the first F-35, the first F-22. I worked for the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, but I can tell you with all of that, the Tomcat era, as you can tell by my enthusiasm in my store, is very unique. Grumman was a very unique company. I still tell people that have manufacturing problems to look at the way Leo Grumman ran his company. When he couldn't make something, he made campers or mail trucks, whatever, right? That's the kind of attitude that was gone, and it was in that marketing department, the presentations department, that some of this great stuff. I mean, the type of people that built the Tomcat also marketed it and illustrated the manuals and did everything. And I can just tell you, having been exposed, from everything from the F-4 Phantom up and through, it was unique. What's happening at Grumman, what happened at Grumman during that period in particular. I mean, the space program's a whole nother subject, right? But in the F-14 program, everything along the line, R&D, marketing, presentations, prototyping, test pilots, it was just so cohesive and motivated and happy. I mean, you can imagine the disappointment I had, believe it or not, when Lockheed had me working on the F-22. And even the F-35. Thankfully, I worked for the squadron, not for the program, because it's boring, dude. The stuff that they put out was just so
here's the headline, right? The headline is Tomcats not boring.
No, I mean all day long. I mean, could I do F-22 and F-35 stuff? Probably, but we talked about that a bit. We chatted. It's. I don't want to say it's not vanilla, but there's nothing. And it's not, whether it's a good aircraft or not, whether it costs $1 billion a piece or not. Okay, but their ability to engage, outside of maybe going to an air show and touching one or seeing one and and watching hammerheads or whatever, right? Okay, there's that. but the Tomcat can grab you without actually ever having seen one.
Mm.
You know, you can go to a museum now and get excited. It looks like it wants to just go out and kick butt, doesn't it? Sitting on a museum floor with its gear down, right? And you look at it and you go, look at the size of this thing. And then you put a Hornet next to it and it's like, really? We went this way? Right?
Yeah, it's true.
But what they brought to the table, and then that carried I can go on, but the story is that artwork, that feeling at Grumman, you know as well as anyone, you're our point man, carried into the squadrons.
Everything that took place is always, you know, documented through Grumman, and something quite special. And it did go over to the Navy, 100%.
Yeah, you could see, and it's, you know, for the profession that it is, you know, for the movie that came of it, and you can see it in the movie. I mean, wasn't the movie fun, cool, right? Wasn't it the best recruiting thing ever? And the star was, aside from the star, was what they could do with this giant aircraft, right? And do everything. And then those of us that, you know, grew up watching them chase bears and you know, do all the patrols, and so you can still it still engages, you know, Lorenzo. Your base isn't just people like me, you know, or, you know, the guys who flew through that era, and now, you know, we've got a different age group. There's young people that are really enthusiastic about it because they feel like they kind of miss something.
Yeah, we have thousands of people between the age range of, say, 13 and 18. And
they're catching up, right?
Kids,
they're catching up.
You know,
the beauty is they've got the YouTubes that we didn't have.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you're watching cruise videos of Tomcats. How cool is that?
Yeah, you know,
I mean, half the time I couldn't watch them when the internet was young, right? You would get cruise books. We all got cruise books, and like, oh, look at his pictures, and the guys are, you know, making funny faces, you know, before tailhook and right, and all this stuff. It was cruise books. It was a big deal. That was a big production item back in the day, you know. And then you had your personal films and stuff. But these kids, the people who were coming up, getting ready for the next movie and hearing about this venereal Tomcat that's going to make a cameo, you know, in the credits or something, are really super excited. And then the rewatch on Top Gun is like, through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's on all the time.
It's crazy.
You know, we recently had a young kid message us, and he asked if we could, you know, send an F-14 Tomcat over his homecoming football parade at school there on a Saturday night. They were having the barn fire and the homecoming, and would you mind if it was possible to send an F-14 Tomcat? And it's just like,
yeah, good luck.
Cringe.
What time do you want it?
You cringe hearing that. Would you like Zone 5, sir? Well, how do you want the pass? You know?
Did you have the heart to tell him Dick Cheney said no?
But Ed, before I let you go, though, I just want to mention to you one last thing and ask you, we had talked about 143, their flagship bird from the Pukin Dogs. It's at the New England Air Museum. And
yes, carefully hidden.
Yeah, you yourself, licensed Navy artist, and you've done even work on 143 itself. You spent, you know, an example, you did the work on the Super Hornet for VF-14 top hatters, VFA, and you know, you designed the whole thing. They brought it to the paint shop, the idea, and they painted that jet, and you saw it, and that thing was spectacular.
That was a cherry on the resume.
And again, that jet is a flagship for 14, and not just that, but for our United States Navy, and it goes out and represents that across the world, and that's your idea, that's your vision on that vertical stab, both of them.
Yeah,
and to think that
it was cool, but you know, there was kind of a chill factor. Can I tell you, behind the lines, it was great for us. It was great for the squadron. Lots of pictures were taken, and then you know what happened? They found out I was the first civilian to do that, and then everybody kind of got hung up on this. Will be for another show, copyright. And even Dragon took, I think, almost 2 years to just say, screw it, and make the model, which I have in my office. I bought my own model, by the way.
Of your own work.
Good.
I had to buy my own $100-and-something Dragon model.
But again, you know, Ed, I want to thank you for everything. I want to thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank you for being a part of the show, supporting us as always. And everybody, it's Ed Kecko from F-14 Tomcat Legends. We frequently post and advertise a lot of his
Yeah,
artwork.
you do. Thank you.
Available at teespring.com. The link is in his bio if you go to F-14 Tomcat Legends on Instagram, and you can find it also just basically Googling it on the internet as well. But Ed, I want to thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. And you have yourself
Thanks,
a wonderful
guys.
night, sir.
You all have a good night.
All right.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, that was Ed from F-14 Tomcat Legends. Again, thank you. Moving along, Siphon, Tomcatters, VF-31, 2006, F-14D Super Tomcat Rio, Radar Intercept Officer. I feel bad saying that because in your world, sir, you were more of a weapons systems officer at that point. You know, Rio would be more applied to air-to-air.
Yeah, it's
Again,
true.
the last Tomcat cruise, a very special thing to be a part of for 1970 to 2006. They hit the 1 million hour mark in the Tomcat Airborne in 1989, I think, 1990. So you can imagine by your turn the legacy, the history behind you. And you took it out on the last cruise, and that's exciting and something we're excited to get into and talk about it. But before we do, you joined the Navy in
1997.
What were your options? Join the Navy? Get off my couch?
No, for me, it was, I had always wanted to fly. So I knew that I was actually pursuing the career goal of becoming an astronaut. And I knew that the Navy had more astronauts than the Air Force did. And I kind of was wondering why. My dad was a Marine. He flew in the Marines for a little while. And so I kind of had that legacy going on, and I wouldn't have really considered doing anything else ever. So it was a good place for me to go.
You ended up applying, and then I remember we had this conversation about you applied for the academy at 16 to 17 years old, somewhere in there, a young man, ready, desiring, and screaming Tomcat out the back door of the house.
Right. But unfortunately, I don't exactly know how it happened, but I was applying to both the Air Force and Naval academies, mostly just trying to, open my options. I knew I wanted to go to Navy, but something or other happened, and what is it called? DODMER, Department of Defense Medical Examination Review Board, said that I was uncommissionable. Obviously not true. But then the academies got a hold of that, and they weren't interested in me anymore, which is actually fine for me because I ended up meeting my wife at Virginia Tech, where I ended up going to school. So that's good for me.
So out of Virginia Tech, how did this happen now? I have the word Super Hornet in my notes somewhere. Originally.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, and I probably should tell that another time. But basically, when I went to flight school starting in '97, we got married right after starting pre-flight. Went through flight school, and this is the part of the story I should tell another time. But ultimately, I didn't end up getting my wings out of that period of time. I ended up getting the real blessing of getting to go back to flight school. It had nothing to do with academics, thankfully. I ended up going back to flight school after doing a cruise on the Roosevelt. Actually, about the same time that Brian was out there doing stuff. We were going to the Kosovo thing. I came back to flight school, and because I was going back to flight school as a lieutenant, I was an 03 already. I did well, and I was the top of my class. I basically could choose what I wanted to go to, and I wanted to go to fighters. But I was advised that I probably shouldn't go Tomcats. This is 2002 timeframe. They knew that the community was sunsetting pretty soon, and as a lieutenant, it would be a bad idea to go into a community that was shutting down. It should close up my opportunities. Yeah, so they said, hey, you should probably go Super Hornets. That's what I put in for. And I actually got Super Hornets. They actually kind of had to go to bat for me because at that time they really needed to siphon. Sorry, I didn't mean to use my own call sign. They were trying to siphon as many Rios, naval flight officers, off to the Tomcat community to finish stocking out those last classes that needed to come through. They actually had to go to bat for me to go to Super Hornets. The training wing did, and they got a slot for me. But then, in the beginning of 2003, as I was just finishing up, I got my wings, and I was waiting for my orders to go out to Lemoore to go to the Super Hornet rank. And the T-2, which is the final aircraft we use in flight training, went down, fleet-wide, hard down. Something about a trim, some kind of I don't know, I forget, it was elevator trim actuator or something like that. It couldn't fly, and they couldn't produce any more winged aviators. So I got redrafted into Tomcats, which was actually fine by me. Thank you. Don't throw me in the briar patch, right? So I look at that as, even though I was trying to do the right, smart, responsible thing, God said, nope, you're going to go to Tomcats anyway.
Yeah, and understandably so. When the military's phasing a product out, if you're the guy that jumps on board, it's kind of a hinder to your career and advancing. Where someone else that, say, did not go Tomcat and went Super Hornet right away, they would be that many more years ahead of you in that program by the time you finally arrived. But for you, you'd get to enjoy the legacy, of an era.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. Flying the Super Hornet, I mean, it's a great jet. It really is. And in fact, in terms of the backseat, it's a pretty amazing jet. But getting to fly the Tomcat in its final years, especially that final cruise when we had everything in the community, it was a great time to be a Tomcatter.
Well, Twig looked kind of happy in that last cruise video, Skipper.
Amen. It's true.
He was quite excited. So, I mean,
living the dream.
Yeah, again, having everything you need to go get the job done, including at that point, the community had funneled down to the best of the best of the best people, the best maintainers, the best air crews, the best airframes. The Tomcat could not have gotten any better in 2005, 2006. Literally was the point of the sword in the program. Unfortunately, it was its last tour of duty.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show what happens when the community was, I don't want to say underfunded, but certainly in the last years, there was money going elsewhere in naval aviation. And it made it kind of hard to operate, especially like the time when I was going through the RAG, through the Tomcat training program. There are a lot of flights that a radar intercept officer like myself went up on without an operating radar. Doesn't do me a lot of good, does it?
No. Yeah, that was our next question. In 03, 03 was your RAG class. That was 101, Grim Reapers, Oceana.
Yep.
Lot of jets, but we got to say that, with the Grim Reapers, because they have so many airframes, Brian and I had spoke about this, and the mechanics keeping up with them, and they're not all the best airframes because the best ones get sent for deployment.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
Like Brian said, when he went 143 and one of his friends went 101, Brian hit the boat right away, but he only had 11, 12 jets to take care of. His friend had 47 broken jets. And so, not uncommon to hear you say that, you would go out on a RAG mission out of Oceana to go do some training, whether it was nav work, whatever you're doing, and to have to deal with an airplane that wasn't fully functional, but yet could still perform its mission that it needed to do for the day for training. Just wasn't what you wanted to see when you looked down.
Right. Yeah. We always went out, almost always went out as at least a two ship. And so I'm going up with an instructor pilot. I'm the student Rio, and on his wing was an instructor. An instructor Rio with a student pilot, one of my classmates, basically. And doesn't matter if the radar doesn't work, I'm going to get some training out of it. And of course, the other pilot, the student pilot's going to get his work out of it because he's going to have a target, my plane, to work on. And it was just kind of frustrating at times. And we would often go up with a B and a D. I was in the D, and my classmate was in a B or an A.
I was going to say, you were also with the last ARAG class, last F-14.
That's right. Yeah, we had the last students to go through brand new fleet accessions to go to an A squadron. I think we had one pilot and one Rio, I think. Yeah. So it was an unfortunate time in terms of money. It just didn't have all the parts we needed to make the jets full up. It's a constant problem with the RAG anyway, but it was definitely even worse around that time frame. But then the pendulum swung fully by the time we were on that last deployment. As the last two squadrons in the Navy, we had all the parts. It was like Christmas every day. You need this line box. Okay, which one would you like? We've got 7 of them.
All the spares you could ever want.
Yeah, but the problem is they're handing you parts that are worse than what you have.
What was that?
I said the problem is when you cannibalize, you're handing someone parts that are worse than what they have that's broken. It still works. It just hasn't broken yet.
Right.
So you're saying 03 with the RAG. You came out of the RAG, and where was your first your first duty, I guess 31 Tomcatters, obviously. Straight
31, yeah. 31 had just come back from opening up the war, being in Afghanistan. And they had just gotten back from war cruise. They were real experienced. And they were turning around rapidly to start the next deployment.
Unlike 213.
Unlike 213 that came back and basically shut down for 2 years. I'm not going to say anything against them now.
Yeah, well, honestly, no idea. I mean, for different reasons, different things happen training-wise. But yeah, it's, 2 years they didn't get a deployment
together.
Lot.
They went to the O Club a lot, from what I understand.
Someone's got to fill the seats.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I joined them. Me and Chris Radigan, one of the pilots that finished up the ride at the same time I did, joined them underway during workups. We flew out to the Stennis. And I got my very first trap in a cod. And
you see nothing. It just comes to a stop.
Thankfully, I'd already been on a carrier before. I'd done a deployment on a carrier, so I was familiar. But walking out that tail of the cod, I think Rat was probably pretty dazed. He was like, "Whoa!" But so yeah, we joined them in workups and made that next deployment, West Coast deployment, and on the Stennis also. So Brian, I've got time on the Stennis as well.
So when you hit the Stennis, that was I believe Hawaii, right? 03 was RIMPAC, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, that deployment was. We actually did a bunch of exercises on that. I think we were the exercise carrier. We hit RIMPAC, which is roughly 4 weeks of international exercises, everything around the Pacific Rim, including, I think we even had a Chinese ship that year. Kind of interesting, right? Then we went up north and did some exercises off Alaska. We did Northern Edge, so some of the best flying I've ever done up there in the center of Alaska.
Yeah,
big,
beautiful.
Huge, massive exercise. We had something like 150 jets, Air Force and Navy combined. Really awesome flying. It was really awesome. And it was really nice because being D squadron, we had the ASPJ, Airborne Self-Protection Jammer, which I can't talk about too much still. But it was nice to be able to put it through its paces because they had a fully instrumented range up there. We could do train masking. We could show what our own jammer could do against ground radars and surface-to-air missile radars. Things that people were only dreaming about when the Tomcat was originally designed. We were doing and actually proving them operational. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. For all the designers and architects that stood there in 1970 and yelled, "It can do this, it can do that." I mean, they had the bombing switches, the software, everything was in the jet already to drop bombs.
Yeah.
But the technology wasn't fully developed yet to actually make it a true bomber, as in the way it had matured into. And what you took, it's simply, I mean, a lot of airframes, they obviously evolve. The F4A compared to the F4, J or the S, or to say, or it's quite impressive what it can evolve into, but I don't think anything really evolved to the level the Tomcat did. The F-18 started out as what it did, and it kind of finished what it did, the Legacy Hornet, with pretty much the same ordnance loadout, maybe a little bit better in the C model. But when you go into the F-14A and then you look at what they did, and they get into Lantern and air to ground, and it is quite amazing what this airframe was capable of.
Our maintenance department was just killing it. Awesome job. I was starting to say earlier, there were times on that last cruise, this was kind of unheard of for most of the Tomcat community's timeline, but there were times when we were super sparing, as in like being the jet ready to go for the air wing on a particular launch to go do a box hop being, combat hop. Yeah. There are times when we were super sparing for Hornets and going, and they weren't. that was a pretty good feeling.
Don't tell the crowd that. That's not what they were expecting to hear. They thought the Tomcat was broken and the Hornet went because it has so many less, maintenance hours per flight. So it would obviously be working.
No, we were doing some pretty awesome work. It was a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's an angle that a lot of people don't consider when we talk Tomcat and we talk last cruise. You were out in 03 Hawaii on RIMPAC and Northern Edge and all of that. So you had your chance to do what we'll call a focused deployment on, it's just you guys, the boat, and you're doing what you got to do and accomplishing your goals. Of course, you're in an F-14 Tomcat. But when you go out on the last cruise with 31 in 2006, it's different. It's that you have media everywhere. You have this is a big deal. This is 36 years culminating to a final cruise. And what was that like? Share that with us. What was,
Yeah, honestly, to tell you the truth, that actually started in '04 on that the penultimate cruise, if you will, because even in the Pacific, pretty much every place we went, it was, oh, this is the last time the Tomcat's going to be here.
Yeah,
this is the last time the Tomcat's going to be here. Japan, Australia, both ports in Australia. I mean, it was like, it was a party simply because everyone was so happy to see the Tomcat at least one more time. And that really didn't stop even through our 10-month turnaround between '04 and '05. It was 9.5 month turnaround. It was a really short turnaround. Even things like the last time we went to Fallon as an air wing, Fallon had a big, all the people working out in Fallon were like, well, this is the last time we're going to see a Tomcat here. It became like the mantra.
Yeah.
Everything we did, it's the last Tomcat this, the last Tomcat this. I won't say it got old. It didn't get old, but it got almost comical how frequent it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you can understand it, like you say, and I think like Ed was saying, the Tomcat is iconic, unlike any other naval jet. Honestly, just about unlike any other jet. There are a few others that maybe the SR-71 or something like that are also iconic, but there is a love affair with this jet that we got to work around. Got fortunate enough to get chosen for that. Like Brian worked hard to get a good selection and make it to the community, and same with me. It was a blessing to be able to get to do it, and it was nice to be able to talk to people like we did every place we went about what it was like, and how we realized how fortunate we were at the time. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a special thing with the Tomcat, and a lot of people weren't, chosen based on they liked the Tomcat, or you would tell, that you'd wanted to be a part of the Tomcat program. You had that option because academically you were selected. You were given that choice because you're simply so I don't want to say it, but the best of the best, and you were the best they could produce, in that moment. And in that case, they would give you that choice. And, for most people, say 9 out of 10 who worked that hard to fulfill that dream, most of them went Tomcat. There are guys who did go Hornet. They did, like to say the technology side of things, but, the Tomcat was just iconic. It was just, Top Gun, the movie.
Yeah, right.
Say any more? Talk to us a little bit about this last cruise for a minute. Out over Iraq, 2006. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, to say. And everywhere you go, everyone's excited. Everyone's cheering, Tomcat one last time. But there's got to come a time when the jet comes off the front of the bow and it's game face. It's war paint on it.
Absolutely.
You got a mission to do. And you don't want to be shot down on your last Tomcat cruise either. That's kind of,
right.
Not a way to end
thankfully,
things, or lose an airframe.
Thankfully, we didn't have any significant air-to-air threat at that point, and even the surface-to-air threat wasn't real significant at that point. Our main condition was we wanted to help the guys on the ground, and it was neat that probably about half of our squadron had already been at the beginning of the war, at the beginning of Gulf II, and so maybe not half, but a good portion were, and they really knew how to prepare us for that, get us good briefs on what to expect. And so honestly, my very first combat hop, it didn't feel unusual. We had done some really good training up to that point and been well prepared. But it was definitely, you're right, game face was on. The first time you check out the pistol, the Glock, and stick it in your flight vest because you're going into enemy territory.
Absolutely.
You're like, okay, this is real.
Yeah, that's where the party's over.
Right. And so there's some seriousness there, and certainly you're preparing for those flights all the more. But even that gets a little bit mundane when you realize what the threat was, because you're not worried about your own self. You're worried about helping the guys on the ground because they're the ones that are really, really facing the threat. And so you did your best, especially as RIAs, we did our best to part of our weapon is our talking. When we're talking on the radio and telling them what we're seeing, and able to communicate with the guys on the ground and give them some situational awareness of what's going on around them, and be able to help them and tell them what we can do. It gives them, you hear that confidence in their voices, because they're like, yeah, I got my big brother Tomcat over here, who's going to come down and swoop down and you kick your butt if you don't do what I'm telling you to do. So,
and it might just have
nice
Dale
feeling.
Snort Snodgrass in the cockpit to let you know you're extra going to die twice.
Right.
But again, a very special moment, being a part of that. And one of the things, two last things I want to ask you before we finish up.
Sure.
One of them is, it's a special moment. The war is over. It's time to bring the Tomcat home on its final deployment. And I mean, even Christine is working again. It's up flying again, so everything comes to the point of the sword of launching 22 Tomcats, which start the formation overhead of the boat and together assemble and head for Oceania.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most special moments in aviation, I would say you were a part of. The entire world was watching that, and 22 airframes, and you were in one of them, sir.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, we knew this was the last time anyone was ever going to see this. And we were very focused on making it look right. When you see a gigantic iron wedge, partly boron, partly aluminum, partly titanium wedge flying through the sky, the big nacho one more time, we call that, when your wings swept back, it's a nacho, right? So nacho chip. 22 nachos flying through the sky will never be seen again. And we knew that it was going to be a pretty cool thing. So the first thing, obviously, we formed up behind the boat and did a nice flyby for everyone up on deck.
Yeah.
A little lower than we could do at Oceania because, it's at sea.
Yeah. Different set of rules.
Yeah, a little faster probably too, as I recall. But, honestly, the thing, when you're in that formation too, I don't even remember where I was right now. I think I have some photos, so I could probably reconstruct it. But I was somewhere in the middle. And you're looking up and to your left and to your right and behind you. And everywhere you look, there's Tomcats. It was like, this is really cool. And we, all the jets were in great condition. Even like you said, Christine, they had all been washed. They all looked great. Everyone was
maintained.
Everything was clicking. Up. Nice job. And then coming home, the nice one last flyover of Oceania. Your wife and kids are sitting out there. About half of my friends were out there. It was cool.
Yeah, exciting for sure. And had to be a long ride home from to Oceania in the plane, and then from Oceania back to end the day. And you had a lot took place behind you, and the entire world was shock and awe to say.
Yeah, the strange thing for us, we knew in March of 2003 as we were coming home, we knew we had 6+ more months of flying the jet. I still had syllabus events to go through. I still had qualifications to continue getting. So we just went back to basically a normal operation. We went out to the boat one more time actually with that. But 213, they were definitely in the end of an era for us because they started their transition basically immediately.
Yeah, the only thing that worked out with that is they got the 2-seat F model, and unfortunately 31 got the single-seat E model. And at that point, Radigan looks at you and go, "Well, Siphon, thanks for everything, bro. Appreciate it."
It's been good. You don't have a seat in the next aircraft. Sorry about that.
You're welcome to wash my canopy.
So
I mean that's great. We're running long on time here, so I'm not going to go into the second question, but I'm going to set you up for the second question for the next show.
Sure.
A lot of people are always asking the F-22 versus the F-14D Super Tomcat and how they fare against each other. And obviously, you can't really too much go into a 5th-gen platform against a 4th-gen platform, but you can honestly say the 4th-gen platform had enough to raise the eyebrow of the 5th-gen platform. And I think that's a fair statement.
It's a true statement. Yep. True statement.
Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll get into that on the next show. And
that sounds good.
That's a promise. I appreciate that. And something exciting to talk about, especially with the F-22. And it's an incredible platform all to begin with. I mean, I don't think you get much better of an airplane than that, other than making it a 2-seater and putting a Rio in the back.
Let's bring a Raptor pilot on and really dissect that.
Yeah, we were talking about that today, and bringing either a Raptor pilot or a maintainer on to talk a little bit about, the airframe and the differences on, maintenance-wise, and maybe we'll get Brian to spill some of, what it was like, obviously sweating under a Tomcat in the Persian Gulf versus what it's like in sweating under a
I'm
F-22.
curious how many laptops they have in there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I guess it's the difference from a 69 Chevelle mechanic with a 454 4-barrel and a guy with a snap-on scanner standing in front of his Raptor. He's just pressing buttons and looking at you going, okay, it's fixed.
You just had a bug. You had a little computer bug. You're good now.
Yep.
Software reload. But, all right. I thank everybody. You guys, absolutely thank you. It was a wonderful time this evening, and I appreciate everything tonight. And Brian, 143 Puking Dogs, again, thank you for your service, sir. And Siphon, we have 31 Tomcatters. Thank you both. In a closing, anything you guys would like to add?
Hey, I'm just thinking it's good to be able to honor the community this way, especially all the guys, especially the guys who work so hard to keep the jets flying. It's awesome to be able to honor them this way. So hopefully we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and I enjoy representing the maintainers, even though I wasn't that long of a maintainer. But yeah, it's good to need some more maintainer point of views on these things sometimes.
Well, absolutely. And, and that was the idea, was to bring not just, a single interview with an air crew, but also a maintainer, because there's two sides of the story here. He can't go out and do his work without you. The plane doesn't fly without you. And the hard work of the maintainers, to me, is as important as what the air crews can do with that hard work. And that's why you went first, sir. And that's why maintainers will pretty much always be interviewed first, because you just got to have them. And again, it's a dying trade today in the military, and it's something that is so imperative. And there's an incredible skill to be learned here at the same time. And the airlines, mechanics and aviation is a great field. It's a great opportunity to be in. There's a great reward from it, the same way there is in flying the aircraft. But again, I thank you guys, and thank you everybody. And it's been a pleasure. And we are all absolutely, like Siphon said, proud to be able to stand in front of the community and represent, to put this all together, to bring this together, and to offer you guys that inside world of the F-14 Tomcat. Guys like this, Siphon and Brian, are the reason why when you went to an air show and you looked up a Tomcat coming from the left at show center would steal your heart and rob your world. And, again, thank you guys. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.